From the Event Center at Turning Stone in Verona, New York, welcome to the SBE Chapter 22 Broadcast and Technology Expo. And we are pleased to welcome you inside the Event Center at the annual SBE 22 Student Career Seminar. And it is presented by Cayuga, Herkimer, Onondaga, and Tompkins Cortland Community Colleges. And we are all part of the SUNY system, the State University of New York. My name is Xaver, and I'm the chair of the communications program at TC3. Now, I will be one of your hosts for today's program. And each year, SBE Chapter 22 convenes a panel of experts, and they represent all different facets of electronic media industry, and we discuss career options and strategies. This year, we are pleased to be joined by another excellent group. Before I introduce them, though, I would like to introduce my host, my co-host, and my colleague, and he's actually the originator of this student mentoring program. His name is Steve Keeler, and he's from Cayuga Community College. Hi, Steve.
Thank you, Chris. And I too want to welcome everybody to the 15th annual student seminar at the Broadcast Technology Expo. This year, we are joined by many high schools and colleges who are joining us online, and they'll be sending in questions via our chat room, and I'll be relaying those questions to the panel. So I want to say welcome to the high schools and colleges who are joining us. And Chris, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, well, it's time for us to meet our panelists, and I'm excited about this group because I know many of these folks outside of here, so it's a spectacular time. To my immediate left, and this is Keith Copeland. And Keith, I've been working with you, near you, around you, and now you're at my alma mater. So, and he's sporting his colors too, by the way, which is spectacular.
Thank you.
Keith Copeland has a very long career in TV broadcasting, and 20 plus years you were at WTVH, WSYR. Now you're over at Syracuse University,
Right.
And what do you do there?
I am a media manager at Syracuse University, and I know we're going to be talking a lot about careers, but my career in broadcasting, I believe, has uniquely positioned me for the position that I have right now. It's one that I enjoy quite much too, Chris.
Well, I can't wait to see what you were able to share with us. And to your left is Lindsay, and Lindsay LaCorey is new to our area, but not new to broadcasting. And she says her story is very unique because she really hasn't left New York State. Now, she comes from Albany.
Yep.
Marist College.
Yep.
Magna cum laude, by the way, I'm just saying. So we got a smart one here. But I think the most important thing is she's a sportscaster. She's in sports, and you're breaking some barriers there, too. So.
Yeah, that's right. It's becoming more common for females to be in the sports world, but when I started even 7 years ago, there wasn't that many, and especially at the local level. You're seeing the Erin Andrews, you're seeing the Michelle Beatles, you're seeing everybody on the national level, but down at the local level, it's really not that common, but I like being part of that and spearheading that movement and being an inspiration to young girls and young females, saying that they can get in with the guys and you can do whatever you want as long as you're prepared and as long as you have those grades. No one can take that away from you.
And that's a really good point, preparation, so we'll make sure. So she's at WSYR right now, which is spectacular, and was at Westchester before this, and we're just very, very happy to have you here.
Thanks, Chris.
Now, Tom White, he's been a part of this for a very long time, and I asked Tom his title, and it's like Director of Operations for New York State at Time Warner Cable Sports Channel. It's a big mouthful, but here's what I know. This is an all-around great guy who knows how to get things done, and that's truly, I think, his title. Get things done.
Yeah.
He's your go-to guy.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. This is always a pleasure to be here. Like you say, I'm one of those guys that knows engineering, I know production, and it's been a pleasure working in a sports environment. I really like it. We were actually talking about this earlier. If you like to work nights, weekends, you work in sports, you work in broadcasting, that kind of stuff. But it's been really a pleasure working for this company because it gives us the opportunity to cover local sports, plus some professional crunch, Chiefs, but a lot of high school stuff right now, especially with Time Warner doing Thursday and Friday night high school football. So keeps us busy, and again, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful, Tom. And I'll tell you what, folks at home love covering local sports. They love that. Well, whether it's their child or their alma mater, they just absolutely love that. So we love that you're out there doing that. Now, John Porre is the executive director of SBE, and so 21 years in this organization. That's a very long time, John.
Well,
Yeah, welcome to this. And
Thank you very much. Glad to be a part of it today. And the Society of Broadcast Engineers, of course, our local chapter here, has put on this show for many more years than that. But a great opportunity, I think, to communicate with high school students today about the careers in broadcasting, including engineering.
And engineering, well, Steve Keeler knows very much about engineering. One of his programs was designed around engineering, and so he has a background at Cayuga Community College with that. And I have to tell you, as a reporter, I lived for the engineers because the engineers made me look good. They really did, right, Keith, right, Lindsay? Oh my gosh. Yeah, you treat them very, very well. These are the folks who, you know, whatever it is that you need, you just want them on your side. Let's put it that way. And they can help you get that signal up from wherever you're trying to go and dial it in and take care of things. So the engineering side it supports all sides of electronic media, and we greatly appreciate it. And now, of course, as a communications chair, I like them even more because they keep my equipment running when all of the students are out there working on things. All right, I want to start by talking about changes in the field, changes in the industry, and what students can expect. So Keith, you're immediately to my left. Let's just kind of go down the road and talk.
Well, and in preparation of this program today, I clicked on last year's, and I think that the same theme exists today that did at last year's and the year before that, and that's that there are fewer and fewer jobs in this industry, no matter where you look, and especially in the broadcast industry, especially when it comes to commercial television. The same kind of theory requires for the students who are watching this right now, and I know that's what we should be gearing this to. Be nimble, be able to be the engineer, be able to be the producer, be able to be the talent, be able to be anything that is taking place here as part of this production today. And the willingness, it was funny because I know that you guys will probably chime in on this, the willingness not only to be nimble, but be nimble 24/7, 365 days a year. Chris, how many Christmases have you worked? How many Christmases have those of us in the business worked? And I don't want to turn this into a pity party.
No.
You gotta be, this is a hard business, guys. For those of you who are doing it first time as students, for those of you guys who I know over there in the corner who've been doing this for a while, for those, you got to be ready to work and work hard.
Yeah, but you have to agree with me, and I know, Keith, because I've seen you out at those stories. I mean, we would be side by side out in the field wherever. We couldn't imagine being anywhere else.
No.
Because when things break, when action's happening, whether there's a game or a story or wherever, we've got like something going on with us. We need to be there.
Well, and let me just, for reference sake, point to my left here with Lindsay, who, you know, and it's funny because Lindsay and I work together at Channel 9, and we know each other off camera like a lot of us do. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, we're coming up on SU football. We're in SU football season. We got basketball season coming up. I know sports people are incredibly covering and specials and everything else. And then she looks at me and says, "I'm really excited though about the basketball season. I'm looking forward to seeing how." So you talk about being in your blood.
Yeah.
It has to be.
It's not a pity party for you, is it, Lindsay?
No, there's something, you're not supposed to cheer when you're a sportscaster. For sure, you're supposed to be unbiased, but there's something when you're at these games and you're seeing these highlights and you're seeing these kids and you're seeing the exhilaration, and there's something down in your stomach that you're trying to fight back because you're supposed to just be reporting the stories, just be reporting the scores. But I know that deep down inside, I'm a fan of it all. Yeah. That's not to say that it isn't extremely difficult. Yeah. And even, I don't know anything other than one-man banding. Mm-hmm. And for people who aren't in the business or for high schoolers or are just getting started.
Please explain that.
One-man banding is pretty much exactly what it sounds like, which means you are by yourself.
One woman out there with a camera.
One woman banding. Yeah. I go out with a camera, a tripod, a bag full of gear, and whatever, a laptop to edit now because you're getting stuff back. And I'm carrying it all.
Yes.
And sometimes you're parking on an SU hill and you're trudging up and it's snowing and it's cold and you're trying to look the part and carry all the equipment too. So it's a lot of balls to juggle at the same time.
Right.
So it's definitely not what you see when you're sitting on your couch with.
She's not pampered and she does not have a makeup team.
No. That's a good point too, because I do go into the bathroom. Yeah. 10, maybe 15 minutes before my show, if I'm lucky.
Yes.
Usually it's 5. Yeah. And do my own hair and makeup.
Absolutely.
It really is on the most simple of levels. Mm-hmm. But when you love it, the payoff is worth it.
But conversely, the wonderful thing about being a one-person band or one-man band is it's all you.
That's
so
it.
when that story is told, it's your story.
You get to own it.
Yes.
And also,
that feels good.
You rely on yourself as much as you do the supporting cast back at the station, but when you're out in the field, it forces you to be everything. I always tell people who want to get into this business, know as many different tricks of the trade as you can.
Yeah.
Operate the camera, know how to edit, know how to light, know how to write, know how to present, know how to deliver, because then when you're applying for a job, they can't turn you down if you can do every single aspect of it.
And quickly, by the way.
And quickly. Don't forget the deadline. There is a bit of pressure, but the adrenaline will pump you into it.
And I don't want to take time away from the other panelists here either, but those are skills that are now expected. So students out there, it's not a matter of you getting on-the-job training, you know. And I know that the other panelists probably agree. You got to go in with that skill set. This is stuff that you need to learn now because your first job, you know, the person doing the interviewing is going to expect that, and that's what's going to set you apart from the other candidates.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Tom, yeah?
There's a common theme here. It's do more with less.
Yes.
And that's where the business has gone, because from my standpoint, technology is so important to our business, and you can do so much more with less equipment. And it's kind of gone into the broadcasting side of things where unfortunately you can turn the monitor or flip the viewfinder around so you can see your own shot, you know, things like that. And we see it with YNN. You know, they hire VJs. They're called VJs.
Yes.
And they go out and they do their own shows. And you know, I sit here and I kind of snicker because it's across the board. We're doing more with less people, less equipment, less everything. And you know, the original question was, you know, we're starting out here. You know, what advice do you give people?
Yeah.
As far as from an engineering and operations side, get into IT.
Ah.
Get into IT. This is where everything is, and we more and more now in my business, and I wish I had taken more computer classes, but they really on that level when I was in school. I was with Steve. They weren't offered so much, and it wasn't based upon you know, television and what the practical applications are of computer technology and television.
Right.
So
they were more separated, and we were
Yes.
all more separated
Yes.
before. You
I
know,
mean-
journalism was more separated from production, more separated from everything, and now they're
Sales.
all melding sales. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
whole nother ball of wax. But you're right. Having those skills and that skill set.
I mean,
to be
forget
able
it.
to,
Thumb drive. What are you talking about? I mean, I was 3/4-inch tape, you know, editing and,
Right.
and things like that when I was in school. So, you know, there's a point in your career, in everyone's career, where you actually, if you're going to be successful, you need to, you know, expand your knowledge and really pay attention and know how to listen and know how to ask questions and take advantage. And I use that term, take advantage. But you really have to take advantage of your situation. If you're young and you're coming out into this world, you take advantage of the people that you're around, because you're an intern. That's what you're there for. You're
Right.
there to learn, or you're new. And you know, when I started out, I had an engineer that I really worked closely with. His name is Dave Kugler. He has been at Time Warner Cable forever. Upstate Cable, New Channels, Time Warner Cable. And I really looked up to him, and I really relied on him to actually give me those tools. And you know, now I've gone more into the management side, and I'm still very hands-on. But to get into the business, to get into engineering side of things, IT, and then I was lucky enough to take a class at Cayuga, or 2 classes from Hugh Cleland, who has been in the business for a very, very long time, WCMY engineer for there for years, and that piqued my interest with engineering. But IT
IT was the.
it's important for broadcasters too.
Oh, it is. There's no doubt.
You really I mean, it's really important.
And Tom, I'm sure this is something that John can follow up with too. You talked about the change. You know, you started with 3/4. I'm afraid I was at 1 inch.
Yeah.
And I remember when
Wow.
1/2 inch came out,
Yes.
it was like, yes! And then, you
Yeah.
know, we went to the mini tapes and
Yeah.
now tape, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so interesting. But I'm sure from your perspective, John, there's just so much change all the time. We seem to be in this, you know, this age, and again, I don't know if 100 years ago they felt this way, but it's like, next week something's new and something's different. How, as an organization, do you guys stay on top of all of this change?
Well, that is the big challenge. And just like today, you know, you're changing out your cell phone, it seems like every other month.
Exactly.
Because the new version comes out. Technology is changing for the commercial broadcasters, and the engineers really have to stay up on that technology to provide the kind of support that everybody at the station depends on, whether it's news or sports or just programming in general, to make it all go. So those backpacks and the other equipment, you know, that everybody's depending on today, the engineers have to know how to maintain those and purchase the right things that everybody needs to make the station work. So continuing education is a big thing for engineers today, and we'll probably get a little bit more into, you know, where engineers are needed today and where they're coming from, so we can talk about that too.
Well, and you know, continuing education across the board with all of you. I mean, you know, as you've changed careers and you've moved, you've got to have a new skill set each time going into that.
And a self-taught skill set in many cases too, Chris. I don't want to downplay the idea of a college education because you obviously need it and to get yourself, you know, to that next level. But there has to be a willingness too to be self-taught. Now, I can think of the days at Channel 5, and I've seen some of my old colleagues here, and I don't have to tell you the story. The station shut down abruptly, merged operations with Channel 3 in the Syracuse market, and there were a lot of people, a lot of good friends of mine who were broadcast engineers there who were left without jobs. These were people who weren't necessarily, they were great people, but they didn't necessarily have, number one, at that location, the ability to start learning things like Tom was mentioning, IT and computerization, where everything was going. So as a result, they were left in a lurch after that station shut down with, what do I do, where do I go?
Right.
It requires a lot of self-motivation to learn a lot of these things. And you mentioned IT and how important it is, especially from a broadcast engineer standpoint. I do some side work at a radio station in Syracuse. It's part of a cluster of stations, and I know the engineer quite well. Great guy, and I've gone through the years with him there. I remember back in the day when he was fixing cart machines and fixing reel-to-reel tape machines and things of that nature. Now his job is solely IT, solely computer programming.
Right.
Everything in that radio station is done via computer. There was a glitch last weekend where there was dead air. It was because of a computer glitch. There's no plate that you have to warm up like you used to with radio or any of that. You know, you have to have a guy who can go in there and reboot and get it back up. And that's, you know, and it's stuff I'm sure. And they're exactly Control-Alt-Delete, you know, the biggest thing that you'll hear from these guys. But that's it. I mean, again, and I hate to be redundant here, but you know, not only knowing these skills, but being willing to learn them on your own, and being willing to learn them off hours.
I love what you say about that, Keith, because that's what SBE is doing today. You know, there are rooms off on the side where the folks who come here can go off and take a class on their own at no charge to them. And there are so many organizations that offer those that it doesn't have to be at a college where you go and take that particular class, but you're so right. You have to have the initiative to come to the event, to support it, and to be there to be able to meet with these folks who are practitioners, experts in their field, who are then showing you for free, this is how you do X, Y, and Z. So, you know, having something like this is imperative, and it's a wonderful example of that lifelong learning that you have to have in order to be relevant in this industry. Because while I've been in it, and I'm afraid to say it's like 25 years now, it just keeps changing, and it's changing again and again and again. And I remember when I was at Channel 3, I went back in and did some side reporting for them, and I opened up the interface to be able to type my story in, and I'm like, they changed it on me, you know, and while I could still report the story, getting it into the you know, the system that they needed to be able to do what they needed on the back end was a huge issue. All right, I'm hearing IFB, internal foldback, that Steve, I'm just explaining that to our participants, that Steve has something from the chat room. So Steve, what do you have?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We have a question from Dan Gomer from Cayuga Community College, and I think this is probably best directed to Tom and Lindsay. It's a question about technology for sports broadcasting. Dan wants to know if there's a difference between the technology for sports broadcasting and broadcast journalism, and how the technology for sports broadcasting has changed. I think the audience may not know that Tom has a particular focus on the technology for sports broadcasting because Time Warner does so much with sports broadcasting now. So Tom, you want to talk a little bit about the technology that you're using now?
Sure.
And you're focused on full game broadcasts.
Yeah, this is...
I'm
yeah.
more individual stories. You've got the whole thing.
Right. Well, what we try to think of in our department and with Time Warner Cable Sports Channel is that, you know, what does the viewer want to see? Everything's so interactive now, and everything is everyone needs to have their information now. Like you say, phone, you know, well, I got to find out a score. They can find it out
Twitter.
instantly. So yeah, Twitter, everything. So what we're really focused on is giving as much information on the screen as possible. So the technology has come to the point where we need to do simple things to you know, create a better viewing experience. And one of my things in engineering, I've said this for years and years and years, it's not the big things that make a difference. It's the accumulation of the little things that makes the biggest difference. It's the little things like with us, with technology and graphics and things like that, getting clock data for our clock and score bug is huge. It's one of those things, getting the right information on the score stripe. And for people to watch, you know, NFL, people have come to expect the 1st and 10 line. And these are, you know, these are things that people want. Now, with our truck, we don't have the 1st and 10 line. I've been pushing for it, of course, but it's come to a point where, you know, if you want to keep up with what people want, the technology has to be there, which it is. But I would say, to answer the question directly, the biggest difference is, like I say, computer-based, you know, production equipment. Everything's got an interface. Everything's got a touch screen. Everything's got a computer behind it. Graphics especially, and graphically is probably, graphics are the biggest technology difference.
Tom,
I mean, of course there's other things.
Bring up a good point though, because everybody wants the 1st and 10 line, because the viewers at home don't realize the difference between local and national anymore.
Yeah.
The lines have blurred,
Yeah.
and you guys do such a great job, and you have HD, and you have all of those, you know, components. So when the people at home are watching, they don't know, why don't they have this? Well, that's something that the big boys have, you know,
Yeah.
because they have this. They don't know that. So you have a lot of pressure on you to be at that level.
Yeah, yeah, and we do. And unfortunately, everything comes down to, you know, money.
Dollars and cents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
budgets and things like that. Where, you know, we want a lot of things. You know, we want to. I mean, what are we at Time Warner Cable? We're a retention tool. We're a marketing tool. Things like that. I mean, people want to see their kids on TV. They
Right.
want to see them playing sports. They want to see their kids, you know, face close up, right? So you know, those kinds of things, and that's why we purchased large lenses, and that's why we do the things that we do, so that people at home can see their kids, can watch TV, and we can provide a good quality service for Time Warner Cable customers. Because let's face it, you know, Time Warner really needs to have some advantages, some ways to hold customers and to get customers.
Well, there's
because there is so
competition.
much competition.
There
out
is competition. And I want to talk about that. John, if I could bring you back in. You had mentioned earlier, where are the jobs today? So I really got a couple of questions for all of you, but I'd like to start with John. Not only where are the jobs today, but how do you get that job at that interview process? You know, and Keith mentioned a little bit about you better come in with all this skill set, but there's also presentation. So where are those jobs and how do you get them?
Well, you know, it's kind of an anomaly today because, as was mentioned earlier, there are fewer engineering jobs today in this field than there used to be. But there are many openings, and that's because particularly in medium to smaller size markets, it's been tough for station management to find enough qualified engineering help. And I get contacted every week by stations looking for engineers. We have a listing of jobs that averages about 80 jobs around the country at any time you open it up that are all available. So they're there, but people have to make the effort, first of all, to find those lists, and then probably be willing to move to find that job that fits their skills and their background. And like anything else, they need to prepare a good resume and be able to talk about themselves and why they're right for the job, and be willing to take an entry-level position where they're going to learn a little bit, because in spite of all the great education opportunities and represented by the colleges here today, of course, there's nothing like being there in the trenches and learning from those that have been there for a while and understand all the ins and outs. So there are jobs available in engineering, and in fact, there's really a shortage of good young people coming in, have that IT background,
right,
who are willing to learn some of the traditional technical skills and knowledge that's necessary for engineering and TV and radio stations today.
Yeah, can I say though, and Lindsay, I've been in TV. I was at Channel 5 for 20 years, 3 at Channel 9. I don't recall once seeing an intern in the engineering department.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm not,
and
really not to discount.
can.
I agree with what John said. I think it's important.
Yeah,
to get in there and to do it. I mean, if the opportunities are there, people are not taking it. You guys
not taking advantage of it.
I don't know, Tom.
I was not an engineering intern.
Yeah.
Right.
I was I interned under. I interned under the general manager, and he said, "Go down to engineering."
And yet we know how willing the engineers are to mentor. You know, Gary Hartman, who was at Chan 3 with me, my goodness, if I went in there and asked one question and I wanted to know this, Gary would tell me how to build the entire watch, right? Because he's full of knowledge and he wants to share. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's shame on our students, and but for not taking advantage of that, because there are jobs, as you say, John, there are jobs, and there are people willing to mentor. So, we need to encourage that kind of reach out to make yourself broader so that you can be out there, and when something breaks in the field, you can fix it quickly and get back and get done what you need to do.
The way the job is going now, as I said before, you're one-person banding.
Yeah.
If you know,
the more you know.
The more you know, and you forge good relationships, and you have that knowledge yourself now, because everybody in this broadcast industry is really friendly and welcoming and helpful. You scratch my back, I'm going to scratch yours. Even on the local level from other stations.
Yeah.
When we run into the sports guys from YNN all the time, and it's like, hey, where are you going next? What football game are you going to? It's an open thing. So with people in your own department, if you talk to the IT guys, mm-hmm. and you have that knowledge for yourself, something breaks out in the field, it's like a little pat on the back. It's like, hey, I didn't study that, but now I know.
Yeah.
But I think that one of the original questions here was, how do you get a job and how do you keep a job? Mm-hmm. We keep talking about evolving technology and Twitter and social media and everything, but I think we're forgetting the foundation too of good writing.
Absolutely.
Reading the newspaper, mm-hmm. not online, well, on your tablet if you want, on your iPad, even, pick up the old black and white. The more you read, if you like to read, if you write well, those are the foundations of everything. I mean, you can tweet as much as you want.
Right.
But if you have spelling errors or you tweet something that's misspelled, social media is going to eat you alive, and then you're not credible.
Right.
So you need to kind of keep the old school mentality and evolve it with the new school, so it all kind of molds together. Like, you can't just jump right over those English classes, and you can't jump right over, I don't know, take a hard calculus class. Do something that's going to challenge you, because you never know when you're going to do a story on lottery odds and you're going to go talk to a professor. It all comes in. But I think a solid foundation mixed with knowing how to tweet and knowing hashtags and all that stuff all wraps around each other.
Yeah, social media is not the be-all and the end-all. But as I say that, I'm going back to the chat room with Steve to answer another question. So.
Well, our next question on the chat room goes right to what Lindsay was saying. And the question is, how do the advances in technology affect new people who are looking for jobs in the business? And I'll let anybody who wants to answer this one.
I'll jump in. Okay. I know that my Facebook page, my personal one, is not my real name. One, because I don't want angry viewers or, off-kilter viewers bombarding my page. So it's not my real name, it's for my friends and my family, and I have the highest security possible for people who want to find me. because I want to have two separate, I want to have a personal page and I want to have a professional page, because people will use that for you, against you, but it is a great tool if you use it in the right way. Because people are on their phones 24/7 now. You can get to someone a lot faster. You can call someone, you can tweet someone, you can email someone. You can do it the old-fashioned way, but you can use it to your advantage. But you also have to be very wary of how open you are, because people doing research on you can find you if you're at a high school graduation party and it's, oh, fun, let's put pictures up. And then you go apply for a job and that employer types in your Facebook and there's your pictures from your graduation party. You never know. So you just have to be cautious and professional, even as a high schooler, which is just the way it's going.
Well, and so many folks too have that where it's the location. So hey, I'm at at the event center, and here's the location. And if you post that, now someone who, we all understand this, who when you're in front of the camera, who really likes you tremendously for reasons that are not necessarily the way they should be, knows exactly where to find you.
Well, and even beyond that too, I'll say that from a reputation standpoint, most young people now are heavily involved with social media, and you have to be very aware of the fact that not only can you do research to find out what kind of stuff you put up there, but if you do get that job or that internship, you represent a brand. And we've had at Syracuse University, as many other institutions, it's something that you're, a policy in terms of what you can put out there. So along with putting your personal self out there, it's a lot of what you're, what kind of things are you tweeting? What kind of, things are you saying about the organization that you represent? Especially important for young people who are looking for that first internship or looking to get, their first job. Just be careful of what you represent a brand 24/7, and you have to be aware of that.
I would love to see that policy, actually, to be able to share it with our students, and that would be fantastic. Well, I'd like to remind folks what you're watching and where we are. So we are coming to you from the Event Center at Turning Stone. This is the annual SBE Broadcast and Technology Expo, and right now you are watching the career panel for students. And so we're talking about challenges and we're talking about opportunities in the industry at this career seminar. And I want to reintroduce our guests really quickly. To my left is Keith Copeland. He is now with Syracuse University, but he's been in the broadcasting field for decades and decades. To his left yeah, I know makes us sound old, doesn't it? To his left is Lindsay LaCourie, and she is a sports anchor and a sports reporter at WSYR, which is where Keith was immediately before he went over to Syracuse University. To her left is Tom White. He is with Time Warner Cable Sports Channel, and he's the Director of Operations for New York State. And to his left is John Poré, and he is SBE's Executive Director, 21 years. And I do not want to forget my colleague, Steve Keeler, who's at Cayuga Community College, who has as much to say as everyone else. And right now he's just taking questions. But Steve, I want to throw it to you, because you're out there not only teaching, but you know where your grads are getting the jobs. Where do you see them getting those first jobs?
Well, I think that's a great question, Chris. I think a lot of times when we do these panels, when we have people who are experienced in the business, we spend a lot of time talking about where the jobs were when we got in, and we don't spend enough time talking about where the jobs are now. And the thing is, all of us sitting here, we have jobs. So there must be jobs out there. And we often say, well, there's fewer jobs in this area, fewer jobs in that area. But when we look at Department of Labor statistics, what we find is that there are more jobs in media-related professions now than there were 20 years ago. So they are out there. People are working. People are getting jobs. And I think one thing that's really interests me right now is, I see there's an awful lot of sports coverage, way more than there was 10 years ago. We look at all the sports channels that are out there, all the regional sports networks that are out there. There's a lot of jobs in sports coverage right now. So I got a question for Tom. Tom, when you take the truck out and you do a game, how many people are on the crew? Approximately.
Well, during the game, approximately 20.
Yeah, 20 people. 20 people are out there working. How many of them are, let's say, announcers for the game, on camera or on mic?
3.
And so the rest are behind the scenes.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So now multiply that on a Saturday or Sunday by the amount of games that are there, and multiply that by all the sort of sports that we don't pay attention to, everything from Australian rules football to tennis.
Right.
To me, it seems like that's one place where there is a lot of work right now.
But
And I would also agree with John, engineering is a place where there's a lot of work. I had a call yesterday from a station in Nashville calling me in Auburn, New York, saying, we need an engineer. What have you got?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how desperate they are to find good engineers.
Well, even at this event center, even where we are right now, they hire our graduates to do what they need to do, to create events and to put sound systems together and to work a concert or to work a conference. I mean, there are so many jobs in this industry. I agree with that.
Well, in sports or in engineering or both, coming out of college, you have to be willing to get into like a master control position or something to get your foot in the door. And it's not because you don't know what you're doing or anything like that. It's just a way to get your foot in the door, in a way to start understanding the facility that you're in and how it works from that standpoint. And I think a lot of us in this business got our jobs as master control operators. And I actually would like to go back to that the question that was posed just real quick about how has technology affected. And there's a buzzword that has been thrown around for a long time. It's called workflow, and that's the biggest thing. Cameras come out. What do? They record to a media so that you can throw it into your computer so that you can edit right off of that. I mean, it's workflow. And that goes into my business as well. Right now we're recording to a hard drive. We take it out, we bring it in, we dump the data off onto a server, and there it sits, and that's our game. That's where it lives. And if we want to edit off of that, we can pull it right. You know what I mean? It just continues and continues and continues with workflow. And I think that's that. But getting back to the whole job thing, we actually have an opening in our Albany office for a remote engineer in charge.
Pay attention, folks.
It's been open for a very long time, and it's not because we haven't had. Well, it actually is. We've had unqualified people that don't have the experience on a truck. When you're in a truck, it's you got to think fast. You got to know, but you have to stay calm. You have to have the right demeanor. You have to be able to relate with people. You have to be able to relate with talent, and sometimes that's difficult, and because they're just expecting it to work.
You have
producers
closed
and
quarters.
directors and
yes.
So I mean, and the producers and directors and camera people, they're going out there. They're technical by nature because they're behind the scenes, but they're not. When things aren't working, they're not very patient. So you have to be a certain type of person to be able to sit there, kind of take it, brush it off, and move on. Hey, guess what? It doesn't work. Sorry.
And don't dwell on it, because there's no time to defend what's happening, or it's not you, or it's not them. There's no time for that. It's now, and let's fix it first and chat later.
But the jobs in this industry are, I think this was said before, you have to work your way up. You really do. I mean, I see it so much, and no offense about Syracuse University, I see it a lot with interns coming from there, where they're like, boom, I want to be a producer director, and that's it.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, you kind of have to
pay your dues.
You really do.
Yeah.
You really do.
You do. So I understand that we have a chat room question coming up, but I also want to remind the folks who are sitting here, all of you, please go stand next to Steve, and you have an opportunity to ask your question as well. We would love to have you do that. That's what we're here for. So Steve, what is the chat room question?
Well, we have another question. This is from Danielle Scourin, and I think this is for John and perhaps Tom. What's the most rewarding thing you find about being a video engineer?
You want to take that first?
Okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to take it?
Yeah, take it first.
Okay,
Yeah, sure.
all right. Working in television, you walk away with something, right? So you go, you set up, you walk away with a product. And I think on a day-to-day basis, when we walk away and we have a clean show and everything worked and you get a few compliments here and there, great show, watched it, and when you hear people are watching it, that's enough for me. That really is, and you know, there's little things during the day. Oh yeah, we got that working. Oh, that graphic looks great. Oh yeah, you know, boy, that camera looks awesome today. The little things, and like I said before, it's the accumulation of the little things, and for me, that's the most rewarding thing. Tony is sitting over doing audio. I think he can attest to this as well. We just strive on things to work right, look good, sound good, and that's good enough for us.
And I would echo that. I think from listening to our members over the years, the satisfaction that they've provided and produced a good product, quality product that is entertaining or informative for people in the public, that's a lot of what they take pride in.
All right, I'm going to put some folks on the spot here. I see you guys sitting there. I know there has to be a question. You all need jobs. Nico, step up. Let's get a job. And what do you have? Okay.
I just wanted to know how the technology has changed over the past 20 years since it went from taped and quickly went to digital, and how did you guys transfer with that?
Oh yeah. So in the actual broadcast facility, oh, the transition periods.
Slowly. I mean, really, you know. We didn't go to HD quick enough for me. I mean, we should have been, as soon as HD came out, we should have been there. But the problem is that when technology comes out, there's a certain point in time, there's just, you kind of have to let it breathe a little bit. You don't want to be the first one out there, doing something.
Well, we also know that technology, it's just like buying a new car. Buy the first year model, and there are going to be little tweaks and things. So, hanging back sometimes is cost wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and really, as far as people go, I mean, you really have to grow your skill sets and know. And I preach this to all the engineers that I work with. It's really important to know the equipment, to know how to operate the equipment. Otherwise, you can't fix the equipment. Someone tells you that it's doing something wrong and it won't key properly, and if you don't know what a key signal is, then you're done. You're not an engineer.
Nico,
do you know
what keying means?
Yeah.
I should remember from 2 times.
So I'm putting him on the spot. He's saying I'm supposed to know this, right? Yes.
Yeah. But if you don't know how to produce that as an engineer, I think it's always been very, very important to me to know how to operate a piece of equipment, actually operate it for a game, do those things. Because if someone tells me it's not working, how do I know what they're talking about, as an engineer? So.
And if I could just ask Tom, because I saw at Channel 9 the transition from old cameras to new. Those guys, you play with the stuff. I mean, you can't wait for somebody to come up to you and say, "I'm going to teach you how to do this." Yeah. You got to have a naturally inquisitive mind, and you have to be willing to open up the camera settings and play with them. And I know Lindsay was in that position too. You were going from the old to the new cameras.
Oh yeah, I came in right when News Channel 9 went HD. They went HD in February or January of 2011, and I came in March. Mm-hmm. And I came from a non-HD station. So not only was I learning a new camera, it was actually kind of nice because I just learned new altogether. I didn't really have to transition within the same station.
Right.
But it's standing there with someone from IT, making sure you don't blame it because they're going to blame sports. Yeah. If you break a camera, that the news photogs are going to take out. But it's tinkering with it, and it's trial and error. And sometimes it's not until something breaks that you won't know how to fix it until it goes wrong.
Well, and for those who who haven't played with the technology yet, it's like getting a new phone. You get that new phone, and you can either use it in its most limited capacity, or you can spend some time and really understand what its ability is to help you and to help you grow. And you have to do that each and every time a new piece of equipment comes in, and it is that lifelong learning, that challenge over and over and over. I understand Steve has another chat room question.
All right, so we do have another chat room question. First, I'd like to make a comment about the current conversation. One thing to understand is that technology is always going to change in this business.
Right.
And I think both John and Keith talked about the idea that, this is a business where you're going to have lifelong learning. If you're going to keep a job in the business, if you're going to be successful in the business, you have to be willing to constantly adopt new technologies and constantly learn. Because the technology, I'm going to tell you, there's at least one station that between the time we got here and the time we leave today, we'll have adopted a new technology. We'll have switched to something new today and expect everybody in that place to learn it. So you've really got to be, you've got to be committed to lifelong learning in this business, and you have to be a little bit of a fortune teller and kind of predict where things are going so that you can stay on top of things. Okay, so we've got another chat room question, and this is, I think anybody can take this, and this is from Dan Gomer again. Once you've worked your way up the ladder, how difficult is it to maintain that status in the business?
Who wants to take that one?
Wow. You're looking at
Well, Keith, you've got
the longer you're there, the more expensive you get. And in this business, if you're not valuable, you become expensive very quickly.
Yeah, that's very true, because we have seen some encouraged retirements from some longtime folks because they are expensive. And so maintaining that relevancy is even more of a responsibility for you to be able to maintain employment.
But I will say this, as engineers especially, and I'm assuming that the majority of our audience is in the engineering realm, if you know your stuff, you also become very valuable too. And by keeping your skill set current and fresh, you become extremely valuable, because it's a level of expertise that not everyone has.
And speaking of expertise, I just said to one of my staff members is here and at the college, and he's also a producer out on his own. And I said, hey, you want to get over here and talk to the guy at AJA, because he has, da-da-da-da-da. These folks who are out here doing this conference, they are experts in their field. They are incredible experts. And I think because we're doing the student panel, when students are here, it's very tempting to just kind of walk down the aisle, glance, and go, oh yeah, they're representing this or they're representing that. I think it's so imperative, and John, I'm sure you would agree, that you actually stop at that booth and really talk to those individuals whose goal is not necessarily just to sell you that piece of equipment, but they bring a lot to the table. And by having those conversations with them, you learn so much more than just that piece of equipment. You learn how they utilized it and how they got where they are and what was their path and what else can they share with you about that equipment and something else that will help you reach that next level. John, you think so?
I agree. In fact, they all represent that transition from older technology to new. They've obviously had to keep up with it. That's what they're showing at the show today. But most of them have been in the industry for a long time, so they can also tell you about the transition that's been made over the last 20 or 30 years from analog to digital and all the other things that have changed. And a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge, wealth of contacts as well.
Did anybody want to jump in, or
I talk to these guys all the time.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, you mentioned the AJA guys. I talked to one of them yesterday. And I think it's one of those things, too, where in this business you actually have to be a little bit humble. And you need to know, you need to say, I don't know. I say it all the time. I don't know. Maybe I'll give somebody a call. And I call one of these guys because actually it's funny. All of these people out here have their niche. They have their niche. And I think as engineers, we're expected to know all of that. And I'd like to say that I know all of that, but I don't. So you call the guys that do. And it's important. And all these people out here, well, I don't say all of them, I don't know all of them. Most of these people out here understand that this business is very, not everybody makes the same product, therefore you're not going to understand everything equally, and that's why they're there. You call them.
Well, and I love to say, my engineer, Rich Olson is one of my engineers, and Don Perkins, and they save me from myself. They save me from not knowing and making a decision that's not the best decision. And they'll be like, well, yeah, you could go ahead and purchase that, but here are the back-end problems with that particular purchase.
Well, yeah, and I'll go one step further from what Tom's saying here, and John, ask these guys, who are you selling to? Who is buying your equipment right now? Because that's where the jobs are going to be. I mean, we represent broadcast, we represent, but you know what? I'll tell you where education is going, and that's MOOCs, and that's online learning, and Chris knows about it, you guys know about it. There is going to be a need for high production value broadcasts that are done online to a large student-based audience. Every college in the country is exploring it with Obama's call for affordable education. These guys know it, and you as students should know it too. That's where these jobs are going to be as well. Hospitals, facilities that are buying the equipment that's on sale behind us
Yes.
are the places where the jobs are going to be. And it's not just television stations any longer. It's
You
not
are-
just TV stations.
You're just making me smile. Unfortunately, we have something going on in our family, and we're watching the Health Channel at University Hospital. Jennifer Cox, who's standing here, is our SBE scholarship winner. Thank you, SBE, by the way. And she works at Cornell University doing exactly what you're talking about, Keith. 100% what you're talking about. So it is, this equipment is being utilized in other than broadcast ways all the time, but it is being broadcast. It's just not, over the air like we used to think of with our little rabbit ears. It's closed circuit things happening. Coca-Cola, they have their own daily broadcast, at their facilities, and Pepsi and places like this. So it's fascinating.
It really is. Our membership is very diverse. The Society of Broadcast Engineers, military, government, corporations. There's a woman who's in the broadcasting department of the Seattle Mariners, who's a members of ours. Large churches that have broadcast components of radio and television, very big portion. So there's all kinds of ways to use this knowledge and experience in addition to the traditional broadcasting setting.
All right, Steve, we've got a chat room question, I understand.
Yes, we have two questions. One is very, very specific, and then the other one, I think, gets to what we've been talking about during this whole seminar. First one is, what are the opportunities for sports journalism internships in Central New York? Lindsay. And then the other one, and I think this is the big one, how hard was it to get a job out of college, and what should I do when that time comes?
I'll start with the internship question. We have one every day at News Channel 9. And that's by design because we want to give so many students a chance. Now, some people, depending on how many credits or hours, are there longer. The more ambitious ones will come when they're not required to because they just want to get in. And I know that when we go out in the field, we run into the other channels. We run into Channel 3, we run into YNN, and they all have interns with them too.
Yes.
So there's no shortage of that. I know that we're credit-based. We are not going to pay you, unfortunately. So you have to be doing it for college credit. We also do high school job shadows. So you can break in,
which is so
early.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's just a one-day thing, half a day, 4 hours. Depending on what we're doing that day, you can go out in the field with us.
But this is so imperative because it's not what you think it looks like from home. Whether we're talking engineering, whether we're talking sports, whether we're talking news anchor, whatever, radio, it's not what you think from home. So spending that afternoon to shadow someone is the best education you can ever have because either it's going to light that fire underneath you to say, let's go, or it's going to go, oh, whoa. It's like lawyers on TV. They don't litigate. They sit there doing research most of the time, but we see the litigation, the forensic people on, all of the shows out there. They don't have all that fancy stuff and doing all that. It's kind of a boring job. That's the Hollywood version. So to be able to open that up and to have folks to come, can they call you?
Yeah, they can call the sports office. They can go through our website, which is 9wsyr.com. There's actually an internship
process and application.
And you have to apply. And it's not just for sports, that's for
news. But
news.
for a day shadowing?
Yeah,
Lindsay?
for a day shadowing, you could call the sports office and you'll most likely be going around with me.
Yep.
So.
Or Stephen Fonte.
Yes, or
We
Stephen
love
Fonte or
Steve.
Sal. Yeah.
Steve worked with me for a while. I love all your folks.
And I think that real life experience, even though it's an internship, is the best because you can't teach that. You can read it in a book. We can sit up here and talk until we're blue in the face, but until you get your hands on it and do it yourself and feel it yourself, you're not truly going to know what this industry is like because it's not like anything else.
So, Keith, I'd like you to pick up on that in staying with that internship, because I know you've had interns who've been with you. Once they're there, what is their best strategy to make sure they impress the pants off of you so that, well, not necessarily, hello, wrong metaphor, but to impress you enough so that you will recommend them?
Well, to be inquisitive, to ask a lot of questions, to offer any help that they can help. I'm not sure if I heard you mention running coffee at some point,
Right.
but you know, I mean, it can be. And I know it sounds trite, and I know that, and it's not typical of what we're saying, but a willingness to learn everything and to absorb it. I've been in newsrooms where we've had interns who sat in the corner on a computer during their entire shift or texting, and they're getting nothing out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've worked with interns who have come in, who've asked questions, who have known the right shifts to work, weekends, holidays, where their skills might be needed, where you might be willing to have them do something that you wouldn't necessarily admit to management, like take a camera out and cover stories.
Yeah.
And they're now producing newscasts at News Channel 9.
Or
so
somebody calls in sick and you happen to be the intern who's there on that day, Jeff Glore with me.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
literally, and steps into that spot, and you know, the next thing you know, you're anchoring nationwide.
And for engineers especially, and I know that, again, that means that, you know, you paying attention while you're there. It's not just enough to be there, it's paying attention and seeing how things are done. Tom mentioned workflow. How is workflow done? Then start thinking, how can I improve that? How would I do this better? I mean, don't just sit there and be a passive participant.
Don't take it at face value.
Exactly. Be active in the process, and that's my biggest advice to young people. Being part of an education, a higher educational setting now, is be active in this. Ask questions. Don't just sit back and say, "Oh, my professors will tell me what's going on here." No.
And create be memorable in a good way.
Yes, yes.
You want to be the person that comes to mind when a job opening comes about. This business is ever changing. And my first job in the Hudson Valley started from an internship at the station I was at. It just so happened that the guy left 3 months after my internship ended, and I got a call from him saying, "You better be applying," because I was memorable.
Yes.
Well, I did something right. So that's something that, to answer the second question, what do you do? You know, Keith described everything. What do you do to get the job? I feel like internships are the best leaders into jobs, whether it's at the station you're at, or it's a precursor to a station that you want to go to, or a field job that you want to go to, because you're going to have that real life experience. We talk about learning on the job. You have to hit the ground, not even running anymore, it's sprinting.
Well, and Tom, I want to ask a question, because Steve said that he got a phone call from somebody saying, "Do you have any engineers?" Did Steve at all help in your process to get that first one? Did he make a recommendation?
Oh, of course, of course. And I mean, I was lucky in the fact that Steve, and this was what I was going to say about this for jobs in my situation actually falls right into this. It's important to take advantage of your advisors, because chances are, if you're in television, or if you're in a television program, your advisor or your teachers are from that industry.
Right.
And this works with Cayuga, works with TC3. Well, I mean, it works with Onondaga Community College. It works everywhere. There's a lot of resource out there. And simply asking, simply ask, "Can you help me?" Because if I went to Steve Keeler and I said, "Steve, can you help me find a job?" He'd go, "Of course. Of course."
And he'd do it even now.
Which he did.
I mean, not like you need it now, but he would do it now. I mean, he would do it as an alum. If you called up and said, "Something changed for me wherever, I'm looking," they're connected. John, I need you to weigh in on this topic, kind of those best practices for students. And Steve, I'd love for you to come in. We have about 2 minutes left.
Sure. Well, I think there are not as many formal internship opportunities for engineers, unfortunately. Although I do understand that one of the large radio station companies is now rolling out an internship program for their stations, Clear Channel. But there are other less formal opportunities, I think, for young people at stations. But you've got to be aware, you've got to stay alert to those opportunities. And, it might be subbing for somebody, if you've got that technical background and somebody says, "Hey, we're shorthanded, can you come in on Sunday and help me do this?" or what? Take those opportunities. It gets you out there, it gets exposure, it gets you more experience. And again, as was said before, you become a little memorable. And so when they have that opening, they're going to call you.
That's a fantastic, it really is. I mean, that is the way. And I also think reading trade journals, too. Stay relevant within the trade journals so that you have an idea of what's opening up where. Steve, I'm leaving you with the last word.
Well, I think the most important thing to do is stay in school, get your bachelor's degree. There's so many employers now that won't look at you unless you have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. So stick with it, don't quit. do an internship, do more than one if you can. And like everybody said here, make yourself memorable at that internship. Do everything you can, ask questions, be the best intern you can be. Don't sit in the corner texting. Do whatever you can.
Phone, yeah.
And then and for community college students, who we have a lot of here today, and we have a lot in the chat room, if you're going to transfer to a four-year school, which you should, go someplace where you think you're going to want to live and work when you're done. That's one of the most important things you can do.
Because you're going to have that internship at
Right.
that four-year institution, and chances are you'll get that job
Right.
in that area. Yes, that's a
Right.
very good point. That's a really, really good point. Well, I can't thank everyone enough, including the students who are here with us and the students who will be watching this whenever. I'm going to require it from my freshmen, so they're going to be watching the recorded broadcast. But I do, again, want to remind everybody of the opportunities that are here on the floor. And so when you see a conference like this in your area, when there's a national conference, you know, if you really want to learn, and that lifelong learning that Keith is talking about, whether it is at that four-year institution, Stephen, I know you and I and the folks at Herkimer and Onondaga, we all want them to go to that four-year school. But, you know, there are opportunities that do not cost money by simply coming to an event like the SBE, you know, Broadcast and Technology Expo, and tapping into these talented people. And, you know, I mentioned AJA because I can see him. He's right behind me. But every single one of these folks have backgrounds in some form of the industry, and they are here for you, and they can help you. So we encourage all of you to do that very thing. All right, so Keith Copeland, now at SU, I want to thank you. All right, definitely, Lindsay. Oh my gosh, I met you today for the first time, but Lindsay LaCourie, wonderful person. Tell Steve I said hello.
I will. Thanks,
and,
Chris.
Thank you for sharing. And oh my gosh, Tom, you know, every year when you're here, you just make me smile because you bring so much to the table and you're so accommodating with the students. I want to thank you. And John, let's be honest. John Poirier of SBE, without you, we wouldn't be here today. So, you know, thank you very,
Great to
very
be here.
much.
Thank you.
And Steve, I'm going to leave it with you. You started this mentoring and this student career panel. You've brought so much to all of these students, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. So, all right, we are coming to you from SBE Chapter 22. This is Turning Stone and ESF Television. We'd like to thank them for their assistance. Thanks to Steve, and thank you for joining us. We plan to see you again next year.